Thank you for being here. Welcome. Hello, Daisy. Nice to have you. So I'm Tony, and I'm the creator of Shelf Help, which is the world's first self-help book club and platform. And I host our membership here on Substack, the Shelf Help Clubhouse. And in this club, we are all about celebrating self-help and working on ourselves and using reading and books as a way to manage our mental health. So I love book recommendation, giving and receiving. And so today's guest author couldn't really be more perfect. Tonight, I'm live with Daisy Buchanan, writer, journalist, podcaster, founder of the Creative Confidence Clinic here on Substack, and author of this new book, Read Yourself Happy, which is a book celebrating the power of books to make us feel better, I think, and filled with recommendations and ideas on how to use reading to ease our anxiety. So, Daisy, welcome. Thank you so much for being on our live, and welcome.
Hello, it's my absolute pleasure, and I'm so sorry that we're starting late. It's my fault. I don't have the Substack app on my phone because my favourite thing for anxiety management is trying to absolutely minimise all my time on social media. So I didn't know it wouldn't work on my desktop. So that is all on me. I'm so sorry.
We're here now, and it's good to see that you walk the talk and you practice what you preach when you can.
It's interesting having just come to the end of a book tour for Read Yourself Happy, which has been so lovely and so much fun. And I'm a bugger for being on my phone when I travel and just check my emails and I'll just do this. And I'm sure like many people here, it's that mix of kind of work and fun that it never feels fun. And so thinking like, no, I've got to like live by my words, and I've written a book and I've got to put my phone down and pick a book up and I will feel so much better. And it always works. And actually this afternoon I've just about to start the next draft of my next novel. So yeah, it works quite a lot at the moment. It's quite intense. And I really sort of hit the wall this afternoon, and I was like mucking about on my phone, and I thought, I'm going to go outside and read a book. And I felt so, it was almost better than a nap. I felt so refreshed and so like I was in a better world. It was a Persephone book, To Bed with the Grand Music, which is an amazing title by never say no, it's not Margarita, like Margarina Lexi. And yeah, it's the Second World War in this book, and there's nothing takes you out of yourself and cheers you up like thinking I could be in the Second World War and I'm not.
Yeah, perspective. And you talk a lot in the book about you do talk about social media versus books a lot, don't you? And the idea of you can get so much. They're both easy to pick up, but they'll give you very different feelings and very different experiences.
It's so true that I think, especially, and we'll come to this later, I'm sure, but if you are a person who wants to read and you're maybe out of the habit of reading, like our phones are just designed to be so addictive, and they flash and they hook us in. And I spend so much time being so angry with myself, being so addicted to the thing that has been designed to be addictive. And with a book, it's a slow magic. It doesn't release that hook as quickly, but when it does, it's just lovely. And a book will always leave you feeling better than it finds you. I think no matter what you're reading, you will feel kind of lifted and rested and almost sort of like cleansed from it. Whereas when my phone never leaves me feeling better than it finds me. It always throws me out. But I do think it can be quite hard. It's really hard to be a reader and be alive in 2025 because no conditions in the modern world like support in our reading habits. And I honestly think that reading, it's quite a radical act because when we read, we're giving our attention back to ourselves. No one can make us afraid. Unless you might be reading Stephen King and he, is making you feel afraid that you're consenting to, and it's very different. No one's trying to exploit us or make money from us or make us feel bad about who we are. I really, really struggle with comparison, and often, I think, I wish I had this person's hair or this person's holiday or this person's kitchen. Books never make me feel like I'm living my life wrong, especially like novels and fiction, because they're always about people with very messy lives. And most of us have very messy, complicated lives, and we're just not showing that part of ourselves. Whereas, weirdly, I think fiction's more honest when it comes to human flaws.
Yeah, and even if it is a life that you kind of aspire to, it is inspiring in a book, isn't it? You can be inspired, and you're so right. It's like we're not set up for success. Like if you look around the tube and you see somebody reading a book, you kind of think, oh, like it's really nice to see, isn't it? And I think I always feel like I've already got a connection with that person, whatever they're reading. Just the fact that they're not on their phone, even though I probably am as well. But yeah, no, I agree. How do you feel having this one out in the world? This one's quite personal.
It's been really, really lovely. I've had the nicest response, and yeah, I think you're right that we're all. I know I'm, preaching to the choir, but we're a community when we read, and I think what's been so lovely is it's been sort of discovered by book lovers, and the book lovers feel really seen and celebrated. And what I'm hoping and what I'm starting to see as well is it's sort of getting that, I suppose, response from people who are curious and people who have been readers and who'd love to read and are maybe looking for kind of ways to get back in because something's happened where they've been a little bit disconnected from it. But yeah, I'm trying to think of the books. I've given a lot of recommendations. I've got a lot of recommendations. My pile has grown. I've just come back from events in Dublin. I had an incredibly fun day, and I went to so many bookshops and I bought so many books, crazy, crazy number of books. And my pile is teetering. But yeah, I think that's been the best bit. And also, actually, when I have written a novel and I'm talking about the novel, it's quite, I mean, that's really, really fun and really exciting in a different way. But talking to people about a universe I've completely made up is a little bit weird. And I sometimes feel a bit self conscious and feel like, is this a thing? Whereas with this, it's not just my voice at all, it's for everyone. I interviewed so many different people. There's lots of case studies as well as the authors I interviewed, like Emma Gannon and David Nichols. So it feels like it's a community project. It's a book with lots of different voices in it, and that makes it really fun to talk about and share.
Yeah, brilliant. And what has been your, you said you've had a great response, a good response. What's been your favourite bit of feedback so far?
Well, I think it's just hearing that this is a book that leaves people feeling better than it found
Mm.
them. People feel, like that it's kind and they feel sort of held, and it's that mix of, that I think it feels like a mix of sort of memoir and traditional self-help, and
Mm.
that no one that people like, I think people feel like it's been a real friend to them, that it's not like you must read this and you must do
Hmm.
this. It's meeting people where they are, which is
Yeah.
all I ever want from a book, so I'm delighted this book is doing that.
Yeah, I really feel like it's like an invitation to, like you touched on earlier, get back to reading or to read different things or to let reading help you feel a certain way. So there's different chapters, kind of to read yourself happy is the title, but there's different chapters for different things, and there's even a chapter on reading yourself, is it weepy or sad? So because
Yeah,
sometimes like in self-help, we know that we like need to like feel it to heal it, right? So sometimes we do need to feel that part of the range of emotions as well.
that's absolutely it. Read it and weep, I think
Yeah.
the chapter is called. And that was really fun. I mean, one thing as well is I've tried really, to do my research. I'm a journalist, or I was a journalist first, so to kind of look into why these habits exist and to kind of to ground them in, I suppose, a little bit of science and history. And I found out about the history of the weepy and books like Pamela, like the melodramas of the 18th and 19th century, and the sort of that people wanted these books that were going to give them finer feelings, and they're saying, I have shed a half pint of tears on reading Pamela by so not Samuel Johnson. But yeah, that it's been, when we read and we cry, we're in very good company. And that's why I think things like, Colleen Hoover's books being so massively, massively popular, like whatever you think of those books, they're part of a grand literary tradition of melodramas, which we've had for as long as we've had novels. And as well, I imagine quite a lot of people here have read A Little Life for
Mm.
years. I
Yeah.
was like, absolutely not. I am sure that book is excellent. I am sure it is, of great merit and it's beautifully written. It's not for me. If
Yeah.
it's for you, lovely stuff, happy days. You crack on. I don't think I'm going to bother myself. I've heard people have said you'll cry so much you'll have to go to bed for a month. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm fine. And then my friend Becky sort of forced her copy into my hand and said, "This is my favourite book of all time. Please read it." And when someone you loved says, "I love
Mm.
this book," you feel obliged to have a go. And to be honest, I kept this book for 6 months, maybe longer, and I felt guilty and I felt cross every time I saw it on the shelf until the guilt just
Because
got.
it's about this big as well.
Yeah, it's fast, and that was it. And when I picked it up, I thought, I'm going to be feeling sad for a long time, aren't I? Oh Lord! But unbelievably, I read it in a bank holiday weekend, and it was nothing like what I was expecting. And it is sad, it is desperate, it's devastating, but also it's so tender and love filled.
Mm.
And the heavy, dark bits are dark and heavy, but there's a lot of light in there too. I was astounded, and it's a book that I think we've all. I don't know anyone whose life isn't touched by some kind of trauma or pain or complication. And I think we feel like we're alone in that. And I think that those books, even when we've not been through the experience, we've all been through those feelings. And they, again, just make us realize that our experiences deserve, I suppose, our feelings are real and we should honor
Mm.
them, feel them, and live through them. But at the same time, they're not going to be so heavy that they'll crush us if we know we're not alone in them.
Yeah, sure. I love how you share in the book about being a teenager and a child and teenager and discovering books and then and feeling less alone because you felt very alone in the real world. And so the books were kind of your support. And also, you do share quite a lot of, there's a lot of science behind books will help manage your nervous system. They do help you feel less alone. I think you interviewed Dr. Soph, don't you, who talked
Yeah,
about that there's so much science behind why it makes us feel better. So it actually is a self-care tool. And I think I've heard you say in the book, reading is medicine, or books are medicine, and they actually are.
absolutely. I mean, one
Yeah.
incredible thing I found out as well, annoyingly, I found out after I finished writing the book from Martha Beck. It's to do with the parts of our brain that generate and create anxiety. And we all know, I think, don't we? It's really hard to be creative when we're really, really anxious. That ironically,
Mm.
anxiety can be quite creative because it's going, what if, what if, what if, and coming up with all these like bonkers, implausible but believable scenarios. But so but it's really hard to kind of be in creative flow when you're anxious. However, when the more we feed and nourish the part of our brain that is doing the creative flow, the bit that produces anxiety has a lot less power. And so
Mm.
reading, it's a creative and imaginative act. And all you really have to do is to sort of to think of, like, imagine being somewhere else, and with the prompts you get in a book, and you
Mm.
can imagine you're reading a book where the heroine's on the beach and it's a hot day and she can feel the warmth of the sun in the back of her neck and the back of her arms, and she can smell sun cream and that salty smell of the sea, and the air feels soft and there's a little bit of a breeze and maybe her skin's a little bit sticky where the sun cream is, and she's thinking about having an ice cream, or maybe she can see the ice cream stand and the sort of the creaminess, and maybe there's a little bit of a chocolate flake situation, and the sand feels very soft underfoot, but then she steps on a pebble. All of that sensory, imagining that scene and setting it up, it requires creativity from us. It requires us to kind of engage.
Yeah.
Um, and when we do that, I love that Emma Kamoja said, "I'm there. I always
Yeah.
want to be on the
We're
beach."
there. We're all there.
Done my work. I live by the seaside, so it's I'm always waiting for summer for it to be a little bit warmer.
Oh.
But yeah, then when we start doing that, when we're thinking about beaches and heat and sand and ice cream, we are taking power away from the bit of our brain that's going, "Ah, you've got that meeting coming and it's not going to go well. And you said this thing and I can't believe you said that and you're going to be late and you can't do it." Like, it's so yeah, the more we read and the more we imagine and dream, the stronger one bit it and the better we are at being like, look, we can have a bit of anxiety, but it doesn't, it's in the car, but it doesn't get to drive.
Yeah. I love that. And you do talk about how even though in a story we're not in control because we haven't written the story, but it helps us feel more in control in the real world. It helps us with overwhelm, and it helps us with that kind of feeling of powerlessness. So very important right now if you're feeling if you're really feeling the weight of the world, then escaping into a book, it is an escape, but it's going to really do a lot of good for you, being able to manage real life.
Oh, completely. And I do
Yeah.
think we have a little bit of control when we read because we're sort of imagining the pace. Like, I mean, I think, as a writer of fiction, I feel like it's always really collaborative between author and reader. That I think a good writer will want the reader to be imagining something different. Like, I know, like, when I write a novel, I've written as many different novels as there are readers because everyone is taking their own experiences and their own dreams and their own ideas of, like, if you say, I don't know, something is beautiful, for example, that word means different things to everyone. So, yeah, you're able to frame it around your own experiences and your own life. But then the flip side of that is, and there's a chapter called Reading the World where I talk about how news is designed again to make us feel really, really anxious. I think Paul Dacre, who used to be the editor of the Daily Mail, said something along the lines of the front of the newspaper needs to make people feel angry and scared because that will make them buy it. And what an awful thing to do. So, like, my local supermarket is Morrison's, and the Daily Mail is the first thing I see on the stand when I walk in. I think some
Yeah.
multi-millionaire wants me to feel angry and scared when I'm just going about my day and I've come to pick up potatoes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's not okay. And I think that's why, if we read books written by different authors from all over the world, we get a much, much, much greater context. We understand that certain things that are being reported in a really frightening and alarming way aren't that frightening and alarming, or there's like a context or a reason. And
Yeah.
so I think we can kind of learn more about the world and what to do. And also, I think we're much more empowered to help. And in the book, I talk about how there are books I've read that made me want to go and do something practical when the news does make me feel overwhelmed and
Yeah.
drained and like everything's impossible and there's just no point trying. There is, and I can't think what the organisation's called, Kiva, I think, Kiva.
Yeah.
They are a microloan funding company. So you can lend a few dollars a month and Kiva will distribute that to women setting up businesses, largely in Africa, but all over the world. And I did that because I read The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Duray, which is about a Nigerian teenager who dreams of becoming a teacher, and she's sold by her father into this awful kind of arranged marriage where she's a third wife, I think, and it's child abuse and it's miserable, and she runs away and she sort of encounters all kinds of peril. And that's the sort of that book could be really dark and heavy and miserable. And I think when I read it, it was with a little bit of, you know, guilt and like, oh, I can't just read Nancy Mitford and cheerful books, and I really do need to read this serious book by this important author. And I was stunned in the best way because it's such a
Mm.
happy, uplifting, hopeful, exhilarating book.
Mm.
And yeah, that fictional story based on something really real made me want to admittedly a very, very, very small thing, but it made me feel like I was
Take
doing
an
something
action.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'd read a story in the news about forced marriage and statistics, I would have just, wanted to cry, but probably not
Mm.
felt able to help. I would have felt
Yeah.
too big.
Yeah. Sure. Do you have a reading routine? Like, do you set aside certain time of the day, of the week? Are there certain books you read at certain times, or is it a bit more haphazard?
My favourite reading time is the morning, and I would
Yeah.
say to anyone that if you're struggling, like the first 10 minutes, no one feels like they've got 10 minutes. I know everyone feels like just busy and like they've just got to crack on. But that bit of the morning, it's ours. And I love it because when I wake up, I'm anxious because my brain's suddenly coming online and going, oh my goodness, what did you miss? Go, go, go. Rah.
Yeah.
And it's desperate for input. It's desperate for something. And it's desperate for a phone. And what I do when I read is I'm giving it information and
Yeah.
it's gently leading it away from the anxiety and be like, okay, I know you want something. We're going to give you this story to focus on.
Gentle.
And I found as well that when I read in the morning, I become a bit more ambitious. At night, I'm a little bit too sleepy and I struggle to
Mm.
focus. And sometimes at night or when I'm in the bath, that's when I reread or pick up a comfort read or something like a lovely
Yeah.
fun comedy or something I know I'm not going to have to like, really go for. But I've been able to kind of read books that feel a little bit more daunting. Like I read Bleak House by Charles Dickens by reading 2 chapters at a time, first thing in the morning, whether I wanted to or not. And I found that really improved my focus during the
Oh,
day.
wow.
And I would notice when I wanted to reach my phone and not do it. I felt a lot calmer. I was really surprised by the way the story stayed with me. And then books like that as well, sometimes the first 4 chapters I'm not really feeling it, and then I'll find that I wake up in a good mood and I'm not thinking, oh no, what fresh hell. I'm excited about coming to my book.
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's the habit of the reading, but also getting into maybe quite a meaty book as well and kind of getting into the story.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I do think, and this is in the book, that and you might not feel like reading Bleak House, and that is absolutely fine. Again, I didn't really want to read it for ages, but having this habit, it's
Yeah.
made like the more we read, the more we read. I love that my definition of what a comfort read is and the comfort I get from reading has become so much bigger. But I always say I had to read Rivals by Julie Cooper at least once a year, at least 30 times before I could face reading Bleak House. And I will still read Rivals every year. And I think that's a big thing for me about comfort reading and rereading is if you're struggling with a book, you've always got the happy book and the comfort book to go back to. And
Yeah.
I'm sure lots of people here are writers too. It's rereading books I love that taught me to write because I
Yeah.
learned technique almost by accident. I started to think about how things were done and how books were structured and why things happened in a certain order. But I didn't consciously go looking for that. It was just a really lovely side effect.
That's so nice. I love the idea of the comfort book, like a comfort blanket. And you do say in the book, you talk about there's a specific book you talk about early on. I can't remember which one it is, but it's a big, heavy, very serious, very important book that everyone should read. And the first time you tried to read it, you just couldn't. And then you felt like a failure for not being able to read the book that everyone should read. And you say it's a practice, and it's like if we think about it like something good for you, like exercise. You don't go to the gym and pick up the heaviest weight the first time that you go to the gym or you're back in the gym. So it's kind of like start gently and then you can work and then you work up to that. So like you say, it's the habit, it's the consistency that then becomes part of your self-care routine.
It really is. It was How to Be Both by Ali Smith.
Yeah.
And I mention it because years later, I had to read it for a podcast I was on, and I thought, oh no. And I
Yeah.
loved it.
Do.
I really, really loved it. And that's something because people often say, like, do you ever give up on a book? Is it okay to give up a book and stop reading? And I would say, if your reading habit feels a little bit, I don't know, vulnerable or you love it, but you're not like, we must prioritize reading for pleasure.
Mm.
If there's any book that you're really not enjoying in the moment, it's fine to put it down. And if you are ever going to read that book, like it will find you again. It will. But
Yeah.
it's a spooky, spooky magic. And
Yeah.
I'm never going to apologize for being a bit woo. But
No.
yeah, if you like my sister has just had that with the bee sting. And again, like How to Be Both. It just did it win the Booker Prize or won an enormous prize.
Yeah. The biggie.
And poor Maddie, who's quite a new, she sort of just got really into reading and she struggles with anxiety and finds it really, really helps. But that book set her back months because she didn't enjoy it. She couldn't finish it. She felt really bad because everyone loved it and everyone kept saying how good it was. And
Mm.
clever people loved it. But she felt like she couldn't really read anything else while she was stuck on that. So, yeah, I said like always, always, if you're if you're trying to develop your reading habit and you don't love what you're reading,
Yeah.
it's fine to quit. Like, try to give it a chapter or two.
Yeah.
Because I just started and I've not read it yet, but my dad and I left it at my mum and dad's house. He's talking about Light Perpetual by Francis Bufford, again, another big
Mhm.
literary prize winner. And the first couple of pages are this very like beautiful, lyrical, intense description of a bomb exploding. And if I'd picked it up in the bookshop, I would have gone, oh dear, look, this is quite dense. This is quite, I'm just panicking about like figuring out the science and I can't visualize this all. This is just too much information for me to digest. And if my dad hadn't said, no, 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 stick with it, the rest of the book is much more fun to read, I'd have just gone, nope, absolutely not. So, yeah, I think sometimes it is worth seeing,
Trying things on for size, maybe.
yeah, reading with optimism and thinking, I'll give it a bit of a chance and see if it gets better. But yeah, but also I found that maybe, 5 or 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I would have gone, no, actually, yeah, because 5 years ago it was lockdown,
Yeah.
and that was when I really, really started to think, okay, if I'm going to read my anxiety, I really need to read.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about anxiety then, because the subtitle is How to Use Books to Ease Your Anxiety. So anxiety is a big theme of the book. It's a theme of your life. You talk in the book about GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, which is something you've been diagnosed with. How does it feel talking about that? Kind of like, have you always talked about it, or is this something new that you shared in the book?
Yeah, it was one of the first, like a long time ago, I wrote about it for The Guardian, and that's the first time that I'd written about it. And I was absolutely stunned by the number of people who responded and said to me, and I think the way we've talked about mental health has changed dramatically in the last 10 or 15 years. And I'm so, so grateful for that. And I think that we're all, we sort of normalise this better that, it's okay not to be okay. I'm sort of assuming now more than ever that we're all struggling and suffering with something. Um, what I do now is I used to sort of think, oh, I can't possibly do anything because I'm anxious and my anxiety will get bad. So I just won't. I won't trigger it.
Mhm.
And what I've been learning is how to feel it and how to accept that absolutely no one lives life with zero anxiety. And I don't have to do anything. I just have to be prepared not to push it away and to just accept that it will bubble up sometimes. And if I can just endure it and not run from it and be in it, there's so much good stuff beyond that. And, I think that's it, that if we're feeling our own feelings, no one wants to do that, but it is a superpower. I promise. If we are able to be unhappy or angry or bored or frightened and just be like, and just know that we're not going to feel that way forever.
Yeah.
And also the things I have used to manage my anxiety have included alcohol and food and shopping. And I think it took me a long time, long after my diagnosis, to heal and to figure out how to deal with it, because I was using food and alcohol and shopping whenever I felt something that I didn't want to feel. And yet it's such a simple thing, but when I just sort of thought, no, I have to be in it, and it will end, but if it's going to end, I have to let it begin.
Yeah,
That
sure.
really changed things.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that is such an important point, that it's like it's good to have the tools to manage things. So whether that includes books, but it's also important to know what not to do, isn't it? So, like you say, stay off your phone, maybe not hitting the booze, like recognizing what you do as a response to things when you don't want to feel things. I think lots of people on this call would relate to that. How would you describe your relationship with yourself today then?
Um, I think it's good. I just turned 40, which feels
Happy
like
birthday.
an exciting new era. Thank you so much. I think what I've learned after years of therapy and anxiety management and doing a lot of work, positive and negative, it's realizing the bad feelings don't go away, but they're much shorter. And I haven't lost my critical, negative inner voice. I've just got an extra, different voice that goes, are you sure? Come on now. That's not very nice. What are we doing? And yeah, I think I've got a faith in myself. And it comes and goes. It's always quite um it's always really, really tested by anything like a book deadline, which I've just met. But Yeah, and what I'd really love to do as I move into this exciting new era is to, I suppose, get a greater emotional custody of myself, which I suspect is a work in progress for all of us,
Hmm.
and to feel more like a grown up. It's funny because I did write a book called How to Be a Grown Up, and just be like, no, like I can't. I'm not going to be told off.
Mm.
There's no. I'm not in trouble. I mean, if I've done anything wrong, I might be in trouble, but I haven't. And I think that is the anxiety, because my anxiety makes me very sort of self-centered,
Mm.
in a way that kids are. And it's just realizing, like, oh, actually, no one is looking at me, and that is a good thing. And I can just get on with things and do what I want to do, and stop needing approval, which I think it's normal to need a bit of approval and validation. I think we're all seeking that, and we all want to feel as though we're making good work in the world. We're all trying our hardest, and I think we want that to be recognised. But I suppose it's keeping all of that in perspective and proportion. And yeah, I think it's just, yeah, trusting nothing will ever last forever, good or bad. A couple of weeks ago, I had a day of just, there's nothing bad going on. I had loads of things to do, and I was quite stressed, and I had to do a lot of work. I had some journalism deadlines. I had an event. I had to prep for a party. As soon as I stepped onto the train to go to the event, I thought, did I turn the oven off? Oh, and I'm training for the London Marathon.
You
And
are, yeah.
training is not going so well, but so going out and going for a run is, if I can get a run in, that's a good day. And I was messaging my sisters when I got back, and I was weirdly anxious about like the travel as well. I was anxious about the oven and anxious about getting to where I said I'd be on time and not letting anyone down. And I was properly exhausted, but nicely exhausted when I went to bed. And I messaged my sisters and said, I think, I think the meaning of life might be relief. I think it
Mhm.
might be doing things that you don't really want to do and getting them done and being so glad that you did them.
That is a delicious feeling, isn't it? That is. I think that is adulting, isn't it?
I think so, of knowing, I mean, something I think, people say a lot in recovery, and, because I'm sober now. It's been, in touch wood, over 2.5 years, but it's that play the tape forward of, what would future you like you to do?
Hmm.
Um, and I think I'm quite good at, and I think with anything, it is just like, you don't have to do, if you've got a really, really, really daunting task, um, and often I'm freaked out because I'm thinking about doing the whole task and how can I possibly do it? And you're like, well, do it for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or an hour or however long, and see how you feel after that. But you'll feel better in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour if you just do it.
Yeah. Well, Daisy, I think you're such a good example of someone who, because you're sharing that these are the feelings you have, but you're making great things and you're writing all these books and you're sharing all this great stuff with us. So I think that is just such a brilliant example for people of sometimes it will feel daunting, or often it will, or scary or shitty, or you might feel anxious, but pushing through that when you can, or managing it as you can, is there's so much good stuff on the other side of it. And so you're such a brilliant example of that.
Oh, well, that is so lovely to hear. Thank you so much. When I do teach creative writing and fiction writing, and the main thing I have to say to anyone who is working on a novel is like, it will feel bad at times. And when it feels bad, that doesn't mean you're going wrong. That doesn't mean you're bad. And that doesn't mean the novel is bad. That is a perfectly normal feeling. And the
Yeah.
only difference between aspiring novelists and novelists who've written novels is that the latter had that feeling of like, oh God, what is this? I can't do it. And still kept going and didn't leap up and run away from the desk. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes 3 or 5 or 10 or 100 goes before you manage to stay in the chair, and that is fine.
Sure, lean into it. So, if there was one takeaway from the book, well, there's loads of takeaways, but if there was one thing you would like people to take away from reading this book, what would that be?
I think maybe it's like, you can read a page of a Sweet Valley High book, or War and Peace, or Spot the Dog, or Proust, or Beano Annual, and you're still a reader, you are part of the reader gang. You know, we are legion. You know, there are loads of us, and if you read something and you love it, it's the best way to be alone together. That if you're a reader, you will never be bored. You can always, always, always enjoy your own company, and I think that's precious and valuable. But also, you'll never be stuck for a conversation because you'll always have stories to talk about. You'll always have something outside yourself that's interesting you and engaging you that you can ask other people to, what they think. So it's the best way to be with people and the best way to be by yourself.
Yeah, I never heard that, alone together, but I love that. I think that's so spot on for the gang of readers. And yeah, this is definitely the right crowd for that. Thank you so much. Brilliant
Um,
book.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so, so much for having me. I've really loved this conversation.
Lovely. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. Read Yourself Happy, out now, filled with recommendations and reading tips and interviews and all the good stuff. And we're not sorry about your TBR list going up, up, up after reading. Thank you guys. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye, Daisy.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.